Hold on. Okay, Len, we have you. You're there, right? I see the icon. We've got you back. Are you unmuted? Can you hear us? Hold on. One second. Okay. We might be having some technical difficulties with them. Hold on. Let me try to ask them to unmute and let me see if I can get them up. Len? Hold on. Let me just try to sort this out first, guys. Thank you for being patient. That they're speaking to us, but thanks for coming on, John. And we were just talking about how exciting it's been with the Breeders' Cup. Of course, it was a huge weekend for Team Green again, and you guys really have a knack with the fillies, right?
We're very fortunate. We noticed from a business standpoint that we can't go toe to toe with a lot of these bigger groups or bigger farms or partnerships when it comes to buying the colts. You mentioned Rapoli, and when he and Vinny Viola team up together and spend $20 million on colts, it's tough to buy a colt that you like, because they're gonna get it done, and they're not the only ones. There's a group in California. There's Windstar, there's Spendthrift, there's My Racehorse. There's a lot of conglomerates that are all going together, West Point Thoroughbred. So it's really hard to buy these top colts at the majority of the sales. So we're when they're zigging, we're kind of zagging, and we're seeing that there's much more value in buying better bred fillies. And I give Aaron Yagoda some of the credit on coming up with that idea, although not too much credit, because then he'll want to get a salaried position. But he's actually the one who originally said, well, the fillies are better value, because if you buy a well-bred filly and she doesn't turn out, she's still worth a decent amount of money as a broodmare. If you buy a well-bred colt and it doesn't turn out, you have a loan ornament. So it's a good business plan for us, at least, to go that route. And now we've won the juvenile filly race 2 out of the past 5 years.
Yeah, that's right. And it's true. And I guess with the fillies, obviously, clearly, it's, it can be just as fun. We've seen recently with Flightline, when you have a good colt, even a horse that didn't go through the Triple Crown, we can see that it's sky's the limit. Obviously, when you have a good colt that wins a classic race, or that's a classic type of horse, it can really be, the profits could be, exponential. But with the fillies, again, there just seems to be more security with them. I don't even know if, John, that's the right word, security.
No, I think that's very apt. I think that security, or we also say it's kind of a high floor, lower ceiling investment. You're not going to lose as much on the downside, and sure, you're not going to gain as much on the upside, but there's nothing wrong with having a champion and turning around and selling it for a couple $1 million, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and as you've probably said, and we've heard a lot of many owners say over time, is, those good ones are the ones that pay for the ones that don't quite pan out.
There's no question about it. And you use the example of Flightline, and I agree. There's an example of a horse that's worth $100 million. But he's a once in a generational kind of horse. If you look at this year's Derby winner, Rich Strike, if he doesn't run well in the race coming up this week, and they retire him to be a stallion, he might not even be good enough to stand in Kentucky, as silly as that sounds. And there were other Derby winners and Classic winners and Breeders' Cup winners that didn't have the commercial ability or the pedigree to stand at stud. So it's such a, the horse industry, as is such a crapshoot anyway. We're just trying to hedge our bets a little bit by saying, if we have these well-bred fillies and they turn out, great. And if they don't turn out, well, then we still have some kind of return on investment for us. It's not going to zero.
Right, right. Now, I get that, again, we haven't been able to get your mom and your dad on the line here. I don't see them right now. They'll probably pop back up in just a second here, but hopefully we can get their mic working. But tell me a little bit.
I can do impressions if you want. I can do a Len and Lois impression.
Can you? Okay.
Oh,
So
you'd be surprised.
what would your dad say at this point?
Well, it was so great that when we won that race, because my family was there, and Aaron Yagoda is like family, and he's like the son I never had. And it's just such an overwhelming opportunity to have those kind of horses, and that's why we do these things.
But
was that good?
It was great. I think it was great. I like the Aaron Yagoda part, because I could totally see.
I hear that all the time.
I could totally hear him saying that. But but seriously speaking though, spending that time, or having that time with your family in that kind of setting on that kind of day and winning, it really just has to be like super special.
Yeah, it is. And Aaron was there, and my wife Michelle was there, and my parents were there, and some close friends got to share in that moment. And I think I mentioned on the post-race interview, you win a race like that, and it's so overwhelming, and everything's so new and being thrown at you so quickly, and before you know it, it's like you had all these months and months of build up and planning, and it's almost like a wedding. Like all of a sudden you're standing there going, wait, how come this is done already? You don't get to enjoy it. This one we really enjoyed. It was at a racetrack that we were very familiar with. The weather was beautiful. We were with friends. We had already won, and gone to the trophy room, fortunately, a month earlier. So we kind of knew our way around not only Keeneland's grounds, but also specifically some of the some of the car washes, we call it, going from this paddock to the seats to the winner's circle, to the trophy, all those things. So you really can have a chance to step back and enjoy it. And I would highly recommend it to people. If you're gonna win a big race once, you might as well do it twice, because you'll definitely enjoy it a lot more the second time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I think. I'm sorry, John. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, it really was a very wonderful day for all of us, and I was really proud of the filly. I was really proud of Mark Cassidy and his team for the way that they trained her into the race. I was really happy and proud of the way Tyler Gaffalione rode the horse. I know he's not on the line yet, so I'll embarrass him before he gets here, but that was a ride of the ages, as far as I'm concerned. And on the biggest stage, to do something counterintuitive and find that your horse was in the exact opposite place that you wanted her to be, and to be able to hit a hole on the rail not once but twice. It took that kind of a unbelievable ride to win that race. But the thing that I'm most proud about is that I did get to share it with family and friends down there, and we always have these goals in mind about, are we going to be able to win this race? Are we going to be able to sell this horse? Are we going to be able to do these, accomplish these business goals? But there was so much personal emotion for me to win a race like that with my parents and with my loved ones, because I joke around that they're that about how old they are and stuff, and they're really not that old for my family. Most of my family members live to be 100, so 80 is like the new 50 in my family. But it was just really nice to take a step back and look over and see my parents and just how excited and happy they were. And that's, I was proud as a GM, and I was proud of as being a part owner of the horse, but that moment I was proudest to be their son, because it was just a great opportunity that they've given me to be able to run this operation and put up with the ups and downs.
Well, on that note, I think, Len, do we have you on the phone?
I think we're there.
Oh, there you are, Lois. Did you hear the nice things that your son was just saying about you? And I don't know if he even knew you were on the line yet.
He did not know, and that's who he is. He's we're very, very proud of him and who he's become and what he's been able to accomplish. It's remarkable. Having tried to run the operation myself for the first 20 years. He's really done remarkable things in the last 2 years.
Mhm.
It's been a source of enormous pride and love to see what he's been able to accomplish for us.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you didn't hear my impression of Dad then.
No, I didn't.
That's why we got to get Len on. We got to see what Len's going to tell us. But
Yeah.
Len, we were just talking a second ago with John, and he was telling us how special it was spending it with family. And he was, again, we started a little bit earlier than that. But tell me about the overall experience. You've won the Breeders' Cup before. This is the second time you're winning. What was different for you this time, and was there anything different for you this time?
Yeah, I really, again, if you can't enjoy that event, winning a Breeders' Cup, well, then you probably shouldn't be in this business. It's so gratifying to plan it out, and I think this one was kind of planned out in a way. I mean, you have to be very lucky. We obviously know that, but I think this one was different than the other one because I think we were really part of the whole game plan. I think after Wonder, won the race in July, the debutante. Yeah, I think we kind of stepped back with Mark and said, okay, where are we going with this one? Let's assume for a moment that it is special, that you're right, that this is a very special horse, that what everybody's been saying, all the assistant trainers and everybody else, that this one is special, and you add to it the fact that Mark is a Hall of Famer, so he's been there before, so it's not like he's just blowing smoke. It's, he's been there, he's seen great horses, he's had great horses win big races. So when he says, I think we have something special, I kind of think we kind of stepped back and said, okay, the Breeders' Cup is in November. What if the horse stays sound? What steps do we take along the way so that we get into the Breeders' Cup when the horse is at its peak? And, it just, we go back and John says, okay, here's the races that I think we should shoot for. If we're trying to win in November, well, then we've got to run a race in October, and then we've got to run a race in September. So, and then you would say to yourself, well, were you disappointed at Saratoga because we finished second? And the answer was that wasn't really what we were pointing to. And people say, oh, come on, you're just alibying the fact that you finished second. But really, that wasn't. It was the Darley, race, in October at Keeneland, because that's where, the Breeders' Cup was going to be held. And then it was a question of how much did Tyler want to ride the horse, and he demonstrated that when he said, hey, I'll ride it for nothing, because we had already given the call to Johnny Velasquez when we found out that Tyler, was not going to be available. So again, you put that together and, you feel different about this one. And John was a vital part of it because he's calling the shots and doing it. And then you work your way back to, were we lucky that we were able to buy the horse? And yeah, I guess you get lucky when in September, when all these horses are being offered for sale, and you set up a plan that says you're going to have somebody look at every single one of those horses in the sale. And yeah, we have Kim doing the short list, but then it comes down to John looking at them and Mark looking at them and working out a game plan of which ones are we going to pass on, and then getting to the point where you say, hey, this is not me bidding against my ego, bidding against somebody else's money or ego, because you can't win that game. There's just too many people with more money than you can. So you really got to pick your spots, kind of thing, and you got to be willing to walk away sometimes. And you got to be willing to say, hey, this horse is beyond what we wanted to pay for it. And then you got to have the back experience of saying, wait a second, A guy named Bobby Scanlon many years ago taught us the bidding isn't over when they hit the hammer. You got to check to see whether reserve was attained, and if it wasn't, well, then maybe you go back and try to buy it that way. And so all those things kind of fall into place a little bit. And of course, my entrepreneurial expertise comes into play, right? So again, it's really, and it's exciting when when you get lucky sometimes, and you say it's just luck. This isn't a game. I don't think that can be just luck. Okay, it's got to be a game that luck helps, but you got to have a game plan.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And now, do you think, and I don't know, whoever wants to answer this question, has the program really changed within the last couple of years? Because Mrs. Green, just a minute ago, she had alluded to the fact that John came in, you know, I think more formally, maybe is the way to say it, in the last few years. But John, has the program changed under your direction, in terms of the way you do things, or is it just kind of tweaking what was already there?
I think it's changed. I don't know if it's changed 180 degrees, but it's certainly changed into a different game plan. You know, previously when Mom was running it, we had a very successful claiming operation. We were third in the nation in wins 3 years in a row, and we were running, you know, literally 5 horses a day. So, and our win percentage was over 20%, and Mom did a phenomenal job. When we put pencil to paper and really sat down and said, okay, what are the fixed costs to own a horse of any kind, $5,000 claimer all the way up to a champion? It's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same cost per month to feed and water and vet and shoe and you know, and transport and insure a horse regardless of its level. So if that's the case, then why would we own 100 horses that each are worth $10,000 when we can own 10 horses that are also worth the same value, but now we've just cut our overhead by 50 or 60%. So, and then take the savings and invest it into a better bred horse. So we really, I think over the past 7 or 8 years, we've gotten, you know, we say we always run it as a business, but I think really in the past decade, and Mom and Dad, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've really taken it to another level as far as analyzing it from a business standpoint, as if it was a business. It wasn't just, you know, something that we enjoyed. And when we made that kind of planning shift in our minds, that's when we started buying the better bred horses. That's when we started buying more fillies and colts. And that's when we started getting these kind of results. But it still is the team. It's still Mom and Dad and I looking and analyzing. And the only difference is, you know, I'm bringing them more information, I think, just because it's so much more easily accessible than when Mom was doing it, you know, 15 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
John, do you want to share at all approximately how many hours you put in per week looking at things, looking at horses that run in different tracks overseas, etc.? Because again, I think to be lucky, you have to put in a heck of a lot of work.
Yeah, I think safely I'm putting 50 to 70 hours a week in, between watching videos and communicating and doing analytics, you know, reviewing races, looking at condition books, being on, I'm on a couple of boards now, so being on those calls, trying to help HISA, you know, get through this maze to be able to have some kind of regulatory impact on the industry. So I would say safely it's 50 to 70 hours a week. But I can honestly tell you, it doesn't seem like that. It seems like it's a lot less because I enjoy it so much.
Now, just to give us some kind of perspective, and we don't need like an exact number, but how many horses? So this filly you purchased at the Greens purchased at or DJ Stable, you purchased her at Keeneland September last year, correct?
Correct.
And how many horses would you have purchased at that sale or yearlings in general in 2021? Again, I'm just trying to give people like an idea of like, you know.
Yeah, let me give you a better, I think what's even a bigger number, a better idea from people. We looked at, or we had people look at almost 6,000 yearlings.
Wow.
In that year, 6,000 at the various sales. And of the 6,000, we probably had maybe 300 on the short list. And then we took those 300 and we had Mark Cassie look at them, and I watched them, and I asked Aaron to look at some videos also, and we had the veterinarian look at them, and we asked some of our clients or consigners, and we asked them about, you know, some of the horses. And basically, we got down to about 60 or 70 horses off of that list that passed every single grade, and every single, you know, jumped through every single hoop. And then we ended up buying roughly 20 of those 66.
Wow.
And ironically enough, you know, we had Corniche was on our list the year before that we got outbid on.
Oh.
You know, this filly Wonder Wheel, we pinhooked, and tell me no lies. We bought her as a yearling and sold her as a 2-year-old, and she won 2 grade 1s out in California and ran against us in the Breeders' Cup. So we've had some pretty good success and luck over the past couple of years with this team that we've assembled. But I think it really comes down to, you can't just go there to a sale and look at 20 horses and say, okay, I'm going to buy, you know, the best of the 20 and hope for the best. You need to have context. You need to have an idea of what those horses look like compared to all the other horses that are being offered for sale. Because otherwise you don't really have an idea of which ones should you hit the extra bid for, or which ones you should say, nah, that was enough. I'm gonna wait because I think that this intermission filly down the, you know, a couple of days later is better. And that's always part of the sale is handicapping, because you're gonna run out of money before they run out of horses. So you have to figure out where you want to, you know, bet your shekels. And sometimes if you bet too early in the sale, you miss out on other horses that are later on. We bought the sales topper out of the Phasing Tip in July sale, and it was literally the last horse in the sale. And I waited the entire sale. We looked at every single horse at the Phasing July sale, and every single one of them went through the ring. And I kept saying to Kim Valerio and to Mom and Dad, no, we're going to save money for this Curlin colt at the end. We're going to save money. That, you know, I'm not going to bid one more because I want to save money for the Curlin. So, you know, we spent the money that we thought we were going to spend for the entire sale. That was our budget. But in that case, we only bought one horse. But we thought that was value in that sale. And hopefully he'll turn out to be, you know, a good horse. You know, he's a yearling now. Hopefully he'll turn out to be a good horse, a 2-year-old, and more importantly, as a 3-year-old.
Well, as we know, so I mean, I was going to say.
Did that answer your question? Does that give you a little better context?
No, I think that's a great, actually, that was even better in terms of putting it into perspective, how many horses you need to go through to get a horse like her. One horse is going to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly. Yes, Len.
Christine?
Yes.
There's the other side of it, okay? When we started out, we had to go through the steps of going through with the claiming horses and the allowance horses and the 20,000 horses, and you get lucky and you do it with style, okay? So you can be successful in that area. However, when you try to play in the big leagues, okay, you're up against the micropolies who buys 100 horse yearlings a year. Okay, so you really gotta try to get a competitive advantage, and it can't be that you can outbuy them. And again, he's a friend and everything else, and that's his way of doing it. Okay, and he was very, very interesting because he had the favorite in our race with Wonder Wheel, and they had a small group of friends, about 75 or so, okay, there, okay, and his horse was in the lead, and then it faded, and we were fortunate, okay, and then Mike, 2 races later, wins the male one, and he gets on, and he says, as excited as I am for my win, I'm excited for the greens because they're good people and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just, there are some wonderful people in this game who are competitive, but you got to pick your spots and you got to pay your dues.
Yeah. Well, I think, Len, and maybe this is something for it's a question for Mrs. Green. Going through the claiming game teaches you a lot of lessons. It teaches you probably a lot of hard lessons. And I think you probably get a lot of instant action, but at the same time, it's a good, to me, it seems like it's a good place. It gives you a good education. Mrs. Green, can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. While Len and John did the evaluations of which horses they thought we should be claiming, I actually went to the Cornell Veterinary School for a summer program and learned as much as I possibly could about everything you need to know to take care of a horse and to develop a horse. And they taught us everything from testing the soil to make sure the right minerals would be in the grass that the horse was eating, all the way up through various ailments that horses can get. And horses are strong physical specimens, but health-wise, they're not that great. There are a lot of ailments that they can come up with. And we actually were able to watch the dissection of a front leg. So we got to see all of the ligaments and tendons and muscles that go into that front limb of a horse, which, you know, when they're running at 35 to 40 miles an hour and they weigh about 1,200 pounds on average, there's a tremendous amount of pressure landing on that one foot as they run, because they don't put more than 1 foot down at a time when they're running full tilt. So there's a lot that can go wrong. And if you understand the mechanics of those legs, it really helps when you're talking to a veterinarian or when you're talking to your trainer about what needs to be done or should be done in order to improve the horse's action or the ability for that horse to actually physically run. So that was a tremendous learning experience for me.
Yeah,
I think it's over, Christine, in the sense that you're always getting reports from your trainer as to, you know, what's going on with the horse. And if you don't understand the language or what the magnitude is, certain of those words scare the heck out of you, and you don't know what the right decision to make is. You'll lay a horse up for months. You know, do you do this? Can you live with something? In other words, you're even going back to when you're selecting horses and the vet looks at these horses and says, it has this and that to it. Well, how serious is that? Can you live with that? Can the trainer live with that? Can the trainer have horses that have lived with it? Do you know what a sire, usually throws off? And is this normal for the sire, or is this different from the sire? Now, again, this isn't elementary, but it's certainly very, very important to each of these things. So that's why it's very important to have certain input like that. So you asked initially, was this different from jaywalk? I really think so. I didn't really know, and I don't think we, as good as John Service is, and he certainly is, it was more being a spectator than it was being actively involved in making decisions and picking out things, et cetera.
You know, I think what I'm just for this, since we've been speaking for the past half an hour, what I think everybody can probably glean from this conversation is that victory, that moment in the winner's circle, you know, at the top of the game, really on the, you know, one of racing's biggest day, it's not an accident. B, it takes hundreds of hours to get to that point. I mean, obviously, you know, we know there are people that sometimes they luck into something and, you know, maybe they have a once in a lifetime horse and that's it, and we don't see them again. But the Greens are not that operation. It's not that kind of operation. And I think really what it comes down to is it takes a lot of time to inform yourself, educate yourself, and also so you're in a place where you're comfortable being able to speak the language of the, with the vets, with the trainers, and to understand really, like Mrs. Green was saying about, the biomechanics of a horse and just, some things that are so basic in a horse. I'm not sure if Tyler came on, and if Tyler did come on, I'm going to keep just kind of poking, just kind of reaching out there. If he has come on, if he can unmute and just let us know that he's jumped on. I thought he came on a second ago, but I don't know that I see him.
Just add one more thing before Tyler comes on. I think also we have a responsibility for giving back. Okay, it's not just the racing part. I'm proud of John for what he's done for that, but I'm also proud of John for taking some time and being on the Breeders' Cup committee and being on New York and being on Florida and trying to improve the game. And then I look back and I say, wait, there's a real advantage to knowing as many people in the game as we've gotten to know, both through the accounting and just being involved, because I think you can learn from different people, and it's really enjoyable when we looked around the winner's circle and I said to John, this is wonderful. I think I see so many people that actually know.
Yeah, right, exactly right. Oh, I think, you know what, on that, perfect, Len, your timing is like perfect, because I just saw Tyler pop up as soon as you concluded
Let's get Tyler on.
Yeah, but if you can, if you have time, if you guys can just hang on there, because we'll kind of round back just in a little bit. We have Tyler. We don't want to keep him long. Tyler, thank you for coming on. I know the media has been like absolutely insatiable. They've been harassing you. I think that's probably a good thing, right? The fact that you're in such high demand now.
No, it's definitely been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying myself.
Tyler, we have both John Green and Len Green and Lois Green. All three of them are on the line right now. And earlier on the call, John was commenting on the ride you gave Wonder Wheel in the Breeders' Cup. Can you tell us now? And he was glowing. I have to tell you, he gave you a very, very good report. But tell me, if you can tell us from your perspective, how did that ride? If you can just tell us how that unfolded for you.
First off, he's too kind. The filly did all of it, but she just didn't really break running. Normally she shows a lot of gate speed, but that day she was just kind of a little flat. It took her a little bit to kind of get underneath herself. And we wound up being further back than I anticipated. But just kind of the way that the race unfolded, going into the first turn, got pushed back. We got over to the fence and she was wanting to do some running, but she came back to me nicely, and the spots just kept opening up when we needed it, and she took every single one of them.
Tyler, it's funny you said that, because it makes me think of something that Bobby Frankel used to say, which was that, you can have those holes open up for you. They can open up right at the right time, but if you don't have the horse, it's the horse that really takes you through there. And clearly you had enough horse to capitalize on those moments.
Most definitely. I think there's a replay that kind of shows a head-on or like an overhead view, and I think it was like the 3/8 pole. I was still kind of checking on her, and she was wanting to run at that point. But like I said, as soon as the spots opened, she didn't hesitate. They were tight, and she was full of heart.
Now you actually won 2 Breeders' Cup races, and tell me a little bit. That was your first Breeders' Cup win. Tell me, like, how does it feel? Not only are you getting your first Breeders' Cup win, but you won 2 of them.
It was such a blessing. It's been such a huge goal of not only myself, but my agent as well. He's put in a lot of work, but this was something we've been wanting to accomplish for a while, and it couldn't have happened on a better filly for a better connection. So especially being with Mark Cassie, he got me my first Grade 1 win, my first Triple Crown win, now my first Breeders' Cup win.
Oh, so who were the horses who was your first Grade 1 win? Who was it?
Salty in the La Trayenne on Oaks Day in 2018.
Okay. Oh, nice. Okay. So obviously, the connections, it mattered. And also when you have the support of the trainers, like that, really, that's I mean, that's crucial. That has to be really important when you have especially a trainer like Mark Cassie.
Almost definitely. It gives you all the confidence, you know.
Mhm, mhm. And tell me just your
Uh,
whole,
is that because Mark gives you such detailed instructions on how to run the race? Like as I heard him say, Tyler, you've ridden the horse before, go for it. I mean, that's really detailed, isn't it?
It's definitely up there with some of my longer list of instructions. No, but Mark's great. You know, he brings them over ready. He knows what he has, and he doesn't put too much pressure on us. He just tells us go out there and perform to the best of our abilities, and whether we're good enough or not, it's up to the horse.
Mhm. Now, how much, you know, that Len actually makes me think of something. How much homework, assuming you haven't been on a horse before, because if you've been on the horse before, it's a little bit different. You know her style, you know what they want to, you know, you have an idea what they want to do. How much homework do you put in before you get onto a horse, especially for the big races like the Breeders' Cup races?
Those races, you have to do a little bit more homework, just because they're larger fields. You have horses coming from all over the country. Normal race days, you kind of are familiar with the horses that you're running against. You get to compete against them on a regular basis, but those horses, you only get to watch a couple replays. You just try and figure out a best strategy that fits your horse and in that race. Whether it's speed horse, you like to be to the front, so you try and recognize speed in the race. If you have a closer, you try and see a good horse to follow. Dirt, turf, obviously on grass, you want to save ground, but it's just little tweaks.
Mhm. Does anybody have any
Tyler,
questions for? Oh, sorry. Yes.
Tyler, it's amazing to me because her style of running always was to jump out of the gate and get the lead and don't look back.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you had to completely rethink your style of running this race because of the way she didn't bounce out of the gate quickly the way she usually does. So you have to take so much credit
Mhm.
for the way in which you handled her and got her to go through those narrow spaces. And I'm surprised you didn't get some white paint from the rail on your boot because that was tough. And a 2-year-old to go through those skinny spots and take direction really says a lot about you being able to convince her to do it and she'd be safe.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words, but honestly, anybody could have steered her around there. She's a pleasure to ride. She gives you all the confidence. She's just a tremendous filly. I love her.
Mhm. Well, and
Can I throw one more thing in?
yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
you always want to have a rider who wants to ride you.
Mhm.
And, you know, Tyler, because of what he's done so far, okay, has been elevated now so that he's not our lead rider because he's got a very, very nice gig, okay? And yet he wanted to ride this horse so much so that he was willing to ride it for nothing, okay, the race before. And then I mean, that's just, Tyler, I got to tell you, that tells me more about the character. Everybody knows you're a great rider, but the character you had and the way you worked it out with Johnny V, I just think you're a super individual besides.
Oh, thank you so much. Honestly, I can't thank you enough for giving me that opportunity. I was really upset when we were committed early with the filly at Kentucky Downs, and it wound up canceling that day. So we caught a flight out to New York and rode her in the spinaway, and I'm just so thankful to you guys. None of this would be possible without y'all.
Mhm. You know, Tyler, can you give us, so for some of the members that maybe are not like familiar from where you started, because obviously they're all familiar with you now, but where did you get your start? How did you get involved in racing? And what do you think was some of the defining moments in your life that has kind of brought you to this point?
So I grew up in racing. My father was a jockey. My grandfather was a jockey. My cousin's a jockey. We're all pretty much involved. So I grew up around the racetrack. Used to go to Calder frequently, and I just fell in love with horses at a young age. We moved to Ocala, I think when I was like 8 or 9. Spent quite a few years there. So my dad trained some horses. He was galloping there as well. So I used to go to work with him in the mornings. And when I was 10, he started letting me pony with them. Then I started galloping. I got my first job when I was 11, galloping in the mornings before school and then in the summers, and eventually just kept practicing. But I got an equicizer for my 14th birthday, and that was probably the best thing that I ever got. I rode so many practice races on that. I was able to basically ride all day, and it really helped as far as developing my skills. But it's hard to pick one point. It's just been so much. I've been so blessed. I've had great people surrounding me, a lot of support, and I'm just so thankful.
Mhm. Well, I think you kind of echo a little bit what the Greens were saying earlier, in that you're such a young guy that, some people think, oh, he just got good all of a sudden. But then you realize that there are hundreds and hundreds of hours that you put in, even for you to get to where you are, because you started at such a young age and you worked a lot of hours, and, so you put in a lot of time. You put in your time to get to where you are.
Yeah, just still have a long to go, but I'm
Yeah.
happy with I'm happy with what we've accomplished.
Yeah. Do you guys have questions? Does anybody have any questions for Tyler? Or actually, or for the Greens, or do you have any questions for the Breeders' Cup or in general? Because I feel like I'm monopolizing all the conversation. You guys could put up the hands up at any point during the conversation. But I just, before we won't keep you long, Tyler, because I know it's been a long day. You rode, I think it was Caravel, right? In the Breeders' Cup as well. And tell me the difference. You're going from one race to another, and we've probably talked about this with you before, but how is it, like, your mindset? You come in, you win a big race. Now you got to get back out there. You got to put your game face back on. You know what I mean? And, like, ride the next race is just as well as you did the last race. But you really maybe just want to party and, and celebrate. Like, how does that go for you?
There's time to celebrate, but at work, you try not to get too high on yourself. There's like a day like the Breeders' Cup, you win one early, but there's still so many races and you have to perform to the best of your ability. So you can't get too high on yourself, or you can't get too low. Just kind of stay even and just focus on what the task at hand. It can be difficult at times, especially with a lot going on, but there's something about being on the racetrack on a horse. Everything else kind of goes away, and that becomes your main focus.
What do you think about potentially? I mean, again, I don't know. It seems like it's it's always a tough, like the leading riders in the country are really, really, really tough. But how would you feel to just be in the running for an Eclipse Award this year?
That would be a dream come true. Always wanted to win an Eclipse Award. We were fortunate to get one as an apprentice, but as a journeyman would be a whole nother story.
And what do you think is there like a plan? Do you guys go into the year thinking, okay, we need to ride more horses. We need to, like, is there a plan, or does it just happen?
It just kind of happens. My agent and I, we both want to ride the most we can. We love riding the cart every single day. We want to ride as many races as possible. It betters your chances of winning, and it doesn't hurt to have the experience.
Mm-hmm. And where do you focus most of your races? You're running in certain jurisdictions, but you pretty much travel all over the country, right? For the right horse?
Yes, for the right horse, we'll travel anywhere really, but we focus mainly on Kentucky, New York, and Florida.
Kentucky, New York. And again, very competitive circuits. How do you adjust? Because I know, I've spent a lot of time in Florida. I spent time in New York, very different racetracks. Kentucky, and I guess you run at Kentucky Downs, Church, like very, very different racetracks. I guess you get used to it after a while, but how do you just keep the nuances like all straight and kind of switch between race courses? Because they're very different.
They are. You just have to pay attention. You gotta ride each track as its own. It changes every day. So you just got to pay attention, watch how horses are running, and just kind of use that to your tactics.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think of for just short term? What are you thinking? Like, again, an Eclipse Award would be wonderful, but what do you think is your any short term goals, or and longer term goals? What do you think? What are you planning? What are you hoping for?
Well, obviously, 3-year-old season's coming up. We have a tremendously talented filly and Wonder Wheel, and we have a very nice 2-year-old for Steve Asmussen that we're very excited about. So our main focus is, I guess, 3-year-olds going into next season.
Okay, well, that's exciting. Okay, guys, do you have any questions for Tyler before we let him go? Does anybody have a question? Everybody's been very quiet today, Tyler. Oh, wait, Shane's got a question. Shane, do I need to hold on? We'll get Shane unmuted. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I just want to say that was a great ride. So, I mean, it was just so impressive to watch it. So I don't really have a question. I just want to say great job, and you're going to get your Eclipse award soon enough.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, Ashok, yes. Okay, yeah, you're up.
A question I never asked, Tyler. Did he adopt his style of racing after anybody?
Oh, that's
I would.
interesting.
I like that question, but I would have to say Jerry Bailey and Garrett Gomez. I watched them a lot growing up, and even now, I'll call Jerry, kind of get some tricks and try to apply them to myself. He's been great.
Well, both tremendous riders, like both unbelievable riders. So, I mean, it's so funny you said Jerry Bailey. I kind of thought that, like, that was the first name that came into my head. So that's pretty cool. Ashok, do you have a question for Tyler?
Yeah, actually, it's not a question. It's, you know, I never thought I would get an opportunity to profusely thank Tyler and the Greens, because what happened is I had a small wager actually on Wonder Wheel, and I always bet the gray. And so when I saw Tyler was riding Caravel, I parlayed my winnings on Wonder Wheel onto Caravel at 50 to 1. So many thanks to you, Tyler, and certainly to the Greens as well for starting the bet off. And wonderful ride.
Well, thank you. Congratulations.
You didn't see that one coming, did you, Tyler?
No, that's awesome.
That's pretty cool. Okay, do we have any other questions for Tyler before we let him go? I don't think so. Well, you know, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, it's been, we know that, you know, you've been very busy, and obviously, you know, the media, it's always a good thing. You know, Wayne Lucas would always say, he would sometimes, like in the last year, he would get kind of grouchy at times when the media was like on him. And granted, he's in his 80s, you know, it gets tiring, the whole routine. But my comment to him was, you know, if the media is not at your door and they're not pestering you, that's usually a bad sign. That means you're probably not winning. So when the media is knocking on the door or calling you on the phone, that means that you've been doing the right kind of things. So again, you know, thank you so much for joining us. A tremendous performance in the Breeders' Cup, and we really we wish all the best.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it,
Okay.
guys.
All right. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you.
Okay, guys.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Well, I mean, obviously, again, you know, I keep harping on this, but the Greens, you know, kept telling us that, you know, it takes time. It takes a lot of time to develop whether it's a skill or whether it is to develop a program, or just, you know, none of this happens by accident. I think that's kind of the most, you know, important thing that we've seen here. So, Mr. Green, anything you want to add about Tyler just now that he stepped off the line before we wrap things up?
You know, we've been in this game for a long time and had an awful lot of great jockeys on us. Okay, in fact, we got spoiled in the very beginning because we had someone called Craig Perret, okay, and Antley, okay, riding for us. And, you know, we didn't know how good they were. When we have Tyler on, and we watched that rerun maybe 50 times, and 49 of it, I say, we're not going to win. I mean, he knows that track, which is another real advantage. He'd ridden a horse before, which is a real advantage. And he had confidence that when the opening was there, that Cassie had put enough into the horse and it was ready to explode. And it really was. You couldn't have gotten Wonder Wheel better ready than for that race, because it was just brought along. It didn't shoot its load earlier. And, you know, we finished second somewhere, and I said, doggone it, Mark, you know, he finished second. He said, that's not the race we were aiming for.
Yeah, right.
And, but you had to have all those things come into play to be able to do. I don't know. I guess I was in the game, okay, because I thought it was a great tax deduction, but now I really think you can make some money at this game.
Exactly. That's awesome. John, are you still on the line? Is John Green still on the line? I was going to ask him if he could, speaking of which, if we could get an update on proven strategies, but I don't know if John is still.
You don't have to ask him. We know.
Oh, do you? Okay. Did you speak to,
Yeah.
did you speak to, yes, you
Yeah,
spoke to
proven
Mark?
strategies is down in Gulfstream. So as soon as they'll write us a turf race, we are ready to race. Okay?
Okay. Okay. So he's down at
And
Gulfstream.
as far as
Yeah.
Wonder Wheel is concerned, you know, again, if you follow the same formula, you would say, okay, we want to run it in the Ashland. So what do we have to do so that we're ready for the Ashland? And that works its way back to that's the Ashland is in April. So we have to work our way back to probably somewhere in February. Okay, will be the next race.
Okay. To give her some time off just after the season. Where does she go, Len? So she'll go to Florida as well?
Yeah, she's down with Mark.
Oh, she's already down there. Okay,
I think
good.
she has a next bedroom. I think she has the next bedroom to Mark because she's not letting her have sight.
I'm sure. I'm sure she does. You know, we also have Matt Kuter. He jumped on the line too. I don't know, Matt, if you are able to unmute, maybe give us an update also on community adjusted. Thank you for joining us. I know you were driving, right? So you got caught in traffic there too.
Yeah, New York City traffic, right? It's just it's impossible. Doesn't matter the day of the week of the year. But no, it's good to join. I'm glad I could jump on. Community's doing well. She's in Kentucky. We're giving her about 60 days off. You know, just at the end of the turf season. You know, she had a good season this year. Obviously, she won the 1X, and you know, she was third in the 2X at Saratoga, and then second in the same condition at Colonial. And then the last race was a little bit disappointing, but you know, that was kind of a tough race to get to for the Clements because of having to sort of stop and start with her from a training perspective when, you know, certain races didn't go on the turf. And then we pointed to a race at Laurel and we thought it was going to go and it didn't go, and they brought it back, and then it stretched to the next week. And, you know, so she's you know, she's not a tough filly to train, but, you know, it just sounded like kind of, you know, the stopping and starting and not sort of being able to point to that race didn't help her. And the fact that it was, you know, sort of the end of the turf season, we got a little bit of a muted effort from her. So, you know, just wasn't enough time to kind of get her back the way that Christoph wanted her to then, you know, try to run once more. And just in general, I'm sure a lot of people on the call have been paying attention to racing the last month. You know, the turf courses in a lot of places have been in bad shape, you know, including, you know, New York. They proactively took a bunch of races off the turf, one of which was hers. And there just haven't been a lot of options. So we elected to send her to Kentucky and, you know, give her, you know, sort of a 60-day break. And then we'll bring her back for training for her 5-year-old season and hope to have her ready, you know, for the spring. And, you know, in talking to Christoph about it, I mean, I think, you know, in terms of goals next year, obviously we're going to try to check off the 2X, you know, the condition that she's kind of been knocking at the door on a bit the back half of this year. You know, we think she can win that race, you know, whether it's in New York or, you know, if we look for another regional type option like we did with Colonial. And then just, you know, given her pedigree and, you know, those of you who have obviously seen her in person know she's just a big, beautiful filly. You know, from a breeding perspective, if we could, you know, steal some black type, you know, place in a stakes somewhere, that would probably be the secondary goal. You know, she's obviously a nice looking horse and she's got a little bit of page. She's a half to a stakes winner and a half to a horse who's multiple stakes placed, including, I think he was stakes placed in the Belmont Stakes, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, she's got a little page and she's a nice looking filly. And so, we'll try to do that. So I think that'll kind of be the plan. 60 days, bring her back in Kentucky, try to have her ready for the early spring turf races, and try to check off the 2X if we can somewhere in the Northeast / Mid-Atlantic, and then try to maybe find a stake that she could be competitive in somewhere.
Matt, I've spoken to Christophe a couple of times about her, and I know he always was trying to get her into a longer race, and sometimes the races were coming up like 9 furlongs, what you've spoken to Christophe, what distance does he think is her best distance?
So it's interesting. I think he really thinks she's like a 1 3/8 type. I think he 1 3/8 to 1 1/4, somewhere in that range. Okay. They write 1 3/8 in New York a good bit, but they don't seem to write 1 1/4 all that much. 1 1/8 she can do. She's obviously won at that distance before. He thinks still probably 1.5 miles is a bit too long. Mm-hmm. So somewhere in that range. I mean, I think in talking to him about it, I think obviously the level of competition, matters. So, that's where, as I was saying before, as we look to kind of like check off the 2X, if there's a spot regionally somewhere where maybe, the competition isn't quite as good as it is in New York on the turf, even if a race is 1 1/8, I think we would feel pretty comfortable with that. And, maybe even stretching out to 1.5 miles, it's sort of a secondary track. I think when you get to New York, with the level of turf horses that run in New York, especially in the higher level allowance conditions, mm-hmm. For her, kind of having it the way she wants it, which is probably more that 1 1/4 to 1 3/8, becomes a lot more important, again, whereas, perhaps elsewhere it's more doable for her, at this level, at those tracks. She's just kind of like a grinding type filly. She's, she just keeps coming. But, she doesn't necessarily have that huge turn of foot. And then I think in general too, and I've talked to Christophe about this, in New York, you can run 1 1/16 on the turf. The 1 1 1/16 races in New York in this sort of 2X condition, seem to come up a lot tougher than the 1 1/4, 1 3/8, 1.5 miles races. So, because she can go a bit further, just to try to get her a little bit of class relief, it makes sense to point, on the longer side versus the shorter side as well. So kind of all, and that's not an exact answer, but I think, sort of that middle long distance range is probably her best.
Okay, no, and that does make sense because it also depends on venue, and there's a few more factors involved. Does anybody have any questions for Matt as well? Well, Matt, thank you for coming on. Like I said, I know you were stuck in traffic, and we're looking forward to seeing the filly come back. We'll wait until the spring. And I agree with you. The last time I saw her physically, she's blossomed from just going from like, because we've been now around her for a while, and she's just really, really blossomed into a beautiful, beautiful filly. So we're looking forward to her coming back. I'm assuming probably in New York next spring, and maybe we could see her down. So she's down in Florida. She'll be down in Florida with Christophe this winter, correct?
So she's in Kentucky now.
Oh, she's in Kentucky now. And
for her time off. Yeah. And then she'll probably start early enough to where it will make sense to get her started down at Payson Park with them. And,
okay. So she will go.
Get some sunshine on her back, and kind of go from there. I would imagine she'd start in New York. I mean, I guess theoretically, if she comes in hand, quicker than that, they could look for a race in Florida. But I'd imagine, we'd probably be trying to point for the early season turf races in New York.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. So if anybody doesn't have any more questions for Matt or Len, if you have questions for Len as well, and Lois, they're still there. Shane? Here, let me see if I can unmute you. Oh, there you are. Okay, good.
Thank the Greens, because I know Tuesday's Giving Back Tuesday or whatever it's called, and I think they have something with new vocations where they're matching up to
$30,000 for it. So I just want to say, nice job.
Thank you very much. I really think that's part of what we should be doing all the time. And, you know, Thanksgiving time, we're giving out gifts to the people being in the backside, not for any publicity or anything like that. It's a right thing to do, and we have to keep on remembering that. And that's a vital part of this whole business also. And then when the horse is finished racing, it deserves to have something like new vocation. So thank you very much, and it's something we should be doing.
Okay, wonderful. That was great. Great. Thank you, Shane. Thank you. And thank you, Matt, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Green. Always, we love having you on. And I can tell you firsthand how many emails I get from the members whenever you win. And it doesn't really even have to be a Breeders' Cup race, but whenever you win, or you win a stakes race, or you win a, you know, somewhere that the members see it, they get such joy and pleasure out of it. And I always get emails from the members just saying how excited they were. So just so you know, you have a lot of people in your camp behind you on race day.
Oh, thank you very much. And Christine, I think you should get overtime to today pay, because you really carried the ball very, very well. Thank you.
I don't know if you saw me, I went for my halfway through, or like towards the end, I went for my my cough drop. So I've been trying to keep my voice going, but thank you everybody for joining and for coming on. And again, we just had just a great group of people coming on to talk to us today. So thank you, Len, thank you, Lois, thank you, Matt, and thank you everybody for joining, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah.
Take care.
Bye everybody.